What's going on, YouTube? So coming back today with my next set of NFL rankings. So far I've done my running back and quarterback, and today I'm moving into my wide receiver. So I'll be doing my top 20 instead of my top 10, and then 5 outside instead of 3 outside. So start with the 5 outside, and the first receiver I've got is the Denver Broncos. Probably number 2 receiver, and that is Emmanuel Sanders. So Emmanuel Sanders debatably was more serviceable than Demaryius Thomas this past year. He definitely didn't drop the ball as much. He was a 1,000-yard receiver, 76 catches, 1153, 6 touchdowns. And like I said, Demaryius Thomas just had a case of the drops last year, and Emmanuel Sanders was at times more consistent than him and added another weapon for Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler to be able to trust. So my next player is the aging Arizona Cardinals wide receiver that really had a resurgent season, had over 100 catches this year, and was a really big piece in the Cardinals' run this year to the NFC Championship. And that is Larry Fitzgerald. And I want to put him inside the top 20 because he probably did have a top 20 type season last year. It's hard to trust him with his age going into next year. And he really had been on the decline for a while. And a good season from Carson Palmer and just a good season from the Cardinals offense in general was able to get that spark back a little bit. I think he will still be serviceable next year. I just don't think you can expect as much or as good a stats that he put up in the 2015-16 season. So next I've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Mike Evans. So Evans had some extremely high expectations coming into this year and just did not meet any of them. He was a 1,200-yard receiver, but he only caught 3 touchdowns, less than 80 passes. Again, a guy that had a little bit of a case of the drops this year. If the Buccaneers offense wants to improve, progress the way it is actually capable of, then Mike Evans has got to get better. He's got to be a weapon opposite Vincent Jackson that is able to put up a little bit better stats. Yardage is probably right where it should be, but the touchdowns have to go up, the drops have to go down, and the route running has to be a little bit crisper than it was this year. Anyway, move on to the next player in my 5 outside, and that is the New England Patriots, Julian Edelman. So Edelman spent quite a bit of the year injured, only had 692 and 7 touchdowns, and when he was healthy, he was absolutely fucking shit up. He was healthy about until week 10 and was on pace to be a top 20 receiver. I think he is still the Pats' primary receiver, maybe or if you actually label the receivers that, besides Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski is obviously the best receiver they have, and the next player I've got in my 5 outside is Eric Decker. So Eric Decker actually put up top 10 type statistics this past year, maybe top 15. He had over 1,000 yards receiving, 12 touchdowns. But it's just hard to be able to trust the Jets offense for 2 years in a row the way it performed this past year. Brandon Marshall is very good as well, and I just don't know. Again, I don't know if that can keep up the way it was this past year. Eric Decker is a good receiver. He's put up those type of stats before, and to me, he is still a top 25 receiver, but I don't know about top 20. Some of these receivers in this list I do think are more talented than him. So moving to my top 20, and at number 20, I got the Oakland Raiders rookie receiver this past year, and that is Amari Cooper. So Amari Cooper was very good in his rookie season, caught over 70 catches for over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. And he was a good primary target for Derek Carr and a part of what looks like a very promising offense heading into the future. I've really, really liked the trio of Derek Carr, Amari Cooper, and Latavius Murray. I believe they all have talent, and all will be very solid for years to come. So at number 19, I've got the Indianapolis Colts, T.Y. Hilton. So it feels a little weird putting T.Y. Hilton this low because he's been such a consistent Pro Bowl caliber receiver for 4 years now, and he's never really been a guy that drops that much, but he just the stats weren't there this past season because of the quarterback inconsistency. Get Andrew Luck back for another good season, fully healthy. T.Y. Hilton stay fully healthy, and the Colts have a good season. T.Y. Hilton, I think, will be a top 15 receiver again at least. He put up 11-24 last year and 5 touchdowns. So not terrible stats by any sense of the word, but definitely can do better. So at number 18, I've got the Miami Dolphins, Jarvis Landry. So Jarvis Landry was definitely one of the more serviceable guys for me on fantasy this year. Put up over 1,100 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns, and then another 111 and 1 touchdown on the ground, and also had I believe a returning touchdown or 2. He was a very serviceable player all over the place. Was a very consistent point getter for me in fantasy football this year. Again, these are not fantasy football rankings, but I think this is a guy that will be the Dolphins' best receiver for a few years to come. He's the best receiver I think that they've had in a while. So at number 17, I've got the Kansas City Chiefs, Jeremy Maclin. So Maclin did have a good year, put up good stats really all over the place. 87 catches for 1,088 yards and 8 touchdowns. Seems like he took the place of the old Dwayne Bowe and put up those type of stats. It was good to see Maclin have really what was a fully healthy year and a consistent year at that. So at number 16, I've got the Seattle Seahawks, Doug Baldwin. So Dougie B was able to put up, again, top 10 type stats. He had a ton of touchdowns, over 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, 78 receptions, and again, some of the best, I think the best stats by far that he's put up in his career. Was able to help out Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson was also able to help him out. Very good symbiotic relationship there between receiver and quarterback, and a guy that I think can be very serviceable heading into the future if the Seahawks offense can stay consistent or maybe even progress, especially the passing offense the way it did this year. Russell Wilson came up a lot bigger in the passing game. A lot of people thought he would be able to really ever. So at number 15, I've got the San Diego Chargers, Keenan Allen. So again, a guy a lot like Julian Edelman that spent quite a bit of the year injured. He was a I'd say a top 12 type receiver when healthy, when the Chargers offense is going well. And obviously part of that is thanks to Phillip Rivers, but Keenan Allen is one of the most consistent receivers the Chargers have had in a while. When he went down, they just kind of ran out of options. I mean, Keenan Allen is by far and away the best receiver on the Chargers, and with an aging Antonio Gates, he's becoming definitely the sole best option for Phillip Rivers to go to. So a fully healthy year, and Keenan Allen will definitely prove himself as a top 15, maybe even top 12, maybe even top 10 receiver in the league. So at number 14, I've got the Green Bay Packers, Randall Cobb. There were times this year where Cobb struggled. With Jordy Nelson injured for pretty much the entire year, a lot of the focus went on Randall Cobb. This was a guy that really struggled to put up 100-yard games this year. He only caught 79 passes for 829 and 6 touchdowns. He's still got the talent of a top 15 receiver in this league, and I think with Jordy Nelson back, that'll actually help Cobb out, take some of the focus off, really a lot of the focus off him. A lot of people thought that James Jones, and I believe it was Devontae Parker. I want to say that. That's right here. Let me make sure that. No, it wasn't Devontae Parker. My mind's going blank here on the third receiver for the. All right, give me 1 second on this. I really can't believe I can't remember this guy's name. Wow, this is killing me. Alright, sorry about this, guys. Anyway, I'll come back to the name in a little bit, but yeah. Move on to my number 13, and I've got the Buffalo Bills, Sammy Watkins. So, Watkins, again, far and away the best receivers, the best receiver the Bills have. And I think he'll continue to put up the same. I think he will continue to progress with the stats he's putting up. Put up over 1,000 yards receiving, 60 catches, and 9 touchdowns. And I think the Bills really need to pick up another receiver. I wouldn't say better than Sammy Watkins, but with Tyrod Taylor looking like the man in Buffalo now, I think that he's got a steady quarterback option to work with. And if they can find another guy to go opposite him that will take some of the attention off him, I believe the stats can go up even more, and with the progression of Tyrod Taylor. So at number 12, I've got the guy who was injured all this year for the Green Bay Packers, and that is Jordy Nelson. So, again, I believe he tore his ACL, MCL, something like that in the preseason, and was out for the entire year. And again, I said this a lot about Randall Cobb. A lot of the attention went on him. But when Jordy Nelson comes back, you'll see a lot more, I guess, looks spreading out of the Green Bay Packers offense. Aaron Rodgers will have a lot more options to throw to. If Eddie Lacy's back in shape and back running like he actually can and has been in years past, then that'll open up the Packers offense even more. But if Nelson can stay healthy, then he is, again, in my opinion, a top 10 receiver in this league. So at number 11, I've got the New Orleans Saints, Brandon Cooks. So Cooks had a really impressive year, 1138, 9 touchdowns, definitely took over as the Saints' primary receiver, and looks like it will continue to be that way with Marcus Colston now gone. And they brought in Coby Fleener, so definitely moving in a new direction, finding new guys to take over on that Saints offense. And again, I think Brandon Cooks really seemed like a slot, or seemed like he would be more of a slot receiver coming out of college, but definitely a guy that can really play anywhere. He's one of the fastest receivers in the NFL. He is extremely useful in many he's not a guy that's going to be able to, I guess, moss someone, go up and catch any ball you want, but he's a guy that can run pretty much all the routes you want, can get ahead of receiver, or get behind cornerbacks. He's got really crisp cuts. His route running is really clean, and looks like a guy that can be a solid 1,200-yard receiving type guy, and maybe even 10 touchdowns. So move on to number 10, and I've got the Jacksonville Jaguars breakout receiver, Allen Robinson. So Allen Robinson very much benefited from having Blake Bortles improve vastly this year, and the combination of him and Allen Hurns was a very good one in Jacksonville this year. Allen Robinson, one of the guys that definitely flew under the radar, but put up just insane numbers: 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns, 80 receptions, and 153 targets. So definitely the main option in the Jacksonville Jaguars offense this past year. One of the reasons why I think the Jaguars are actually a dangerous team heading into the future. You look at what they got moving forward now. They just signed Chris Ivory, a good running back. TJ Yeldon should progress and be a great running back in this league. Blake Bortles is obviously progressing in the right way, and then Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns are two of the better young receivers in the league right now as well. So I think all the signs are pointing in the right direction for the Jags. Allen Robinson also heading in the right direction, obviously put up a monster year. I don't know if he's going to be able to put up the same type stats, but you got to put him top 10 with those type of statistics in the previous year. So at number 9, I've got the Denver Broncos' Demaryius Thomas. So Thomas was able to be one of the few receivers to put up 100 catches this year, 105 with 1304 and 6 touchdowns. The problem with Demaryius Thomas this year was just the case of the drops. If he can fix that, get a little bit more consistent, he'll go back to being a top 5 receiver in this league. He has that ability. He's got the athleticism. He had the hands in years past. Like I said, I don't really know what happened this year. Just hope that it improves with whatever quarterback that the Broncos decide to move on with next year. So at number 8, I've got the Chicago Bears' Alshon Jeffrey. So Jeffrey, some of the strongest hands in the NFL, has made some unbelievable catches the last couple of years. I believe he ran into a little bit of injury problems this past year, and was for a little while the best receiver available on free agents. Yeah, I believe he ran into injury problems through a little bit at the beginning of the year and a little bit at the end of the year too, just kind of scattered all over the place. And when he is healthy, he is one of the best receivers in this league by far. He is a top 10 receiver in this league when when healthy. He's got some of the best hands in the NFL. He's one of the most athletic. He's also a very, very big body that the Bears can just throw it up to. Like I said, one of those guys, a lot like Dez Bryant, a lot like DeAndre Hopkins, kind of the Brandon Marshall of old, who kind of showed through this year. But one of those guys, like I said, just a franchise-type receiver that is extremely athletic and you always want on the outside to be able to throw to whenever you need to. So he put up 807 and 4 touchdowns this year. And like I said, if he can spend a full year healthy, I think this is a 1,000-yard, 10-touchdown sort of receiver. So at number 8, I've got the New York Jets' Brandon Marshall. So again, Marshall, extremely impressive stats this year, looking like the Brandon Marshall of old, with another year in New York, if Ryan Fitzpatrick has the same type of year he had this past year, then again, Brandon Marshall put up top 5 type stats this year, kind of looking like the old days with him in Chicago, when him and Jay Cutler were hooking up for 10, 15 touchdowns a year. And again, put up 1502, 14 touchdowns. Him and Fitz looked extremely impressive this year. And to be honest, I'm not even sure if Fitzpatrick will end up with the Jets. I'd say it's about a 90% chance. But with the whole Brock Osweiler contract situation, that kind of blew everything up. He got $18 million a year just because the Texans were really scared they weren't going to end up with the QB, and that kind of fucked up really the rest of the quarterback market for a lot of, I would say, lower quality starting quarterbacks in the NFL, the Ryan Fitzpatricks, Robert Griffins, and I guess Kirk Cousins of the world, depending on how you look at Kirk Cousins right now. And anyway, Brandon Marshall, a guy to me that is, if he can have a few more years of staying in this form, I mean, this is a guy that I believe it was his 10th year in the league, was a rookie in 2006, so he's definitely not young. See if hopefully he can keep it up, though. I do like Brandon Marshall. I think he's one of the better receivers in the league. Can definitely go up and snap. One of the more athletic guys, at least back in his prime. And, I mean, obviously right now, putting up stats that show he's still in his prime. So, anyway, move on to my number 6 receiver, and I have the Houston Texans' DeAndre Hopkins. Now, I believe if there's any guy that can jump up into the top 3 that's outside of it right now, it is DeAndre Hopkins on this list. He was able to put up 15, 21, and 11 touchdowns this past year with Brian Hoyer, Ryan Mallett, those type of quarterback, and Brandon Weeden throwing to him. And if Brock Osweiler is able to be good this year, and DeAndre Hopkins being the clear-cut number 1 receiver for the Houston Texans, again, I think this is a guy that could be one of the top 3 receivers in this league, maybe even top 2, who knows. He's really never struggled with injury problems in his career. He was extremely consistent this year. Especially at the beginning of the year, Texans, especially at the end of the year, ran into a lot of quarterback troubles, tended to get worse as the year went along. But again, this is a guy that put up over 1,500 yards, over 100 receptions, over 110 receptions, and over 10 touchdowns. So monster stats, and I can definitely see that continuing in 2016. So at number 5, I've got the Cincinnati Bengals, AJ Green. So AJ Green's been one of the superstars in the league for a couple years now, since he entered the league in 2011. Definitely been the star of the Cincinnati Bengals offense, along with Andy Dalton for a couple years now. And maybe not the best stats of any top 5 player on this list, but definitely respectable at 86 catches, 1,297, and 10 touchdowns. Was hurt a little bit this year by the inconsistencies of the offense. Andy Dalton was extremely hot coming out of the gate and kind of cooled down as the year went along. And AJ Green actually was hurt a little bit by the emergence of receivers in Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu. They actually took a couple of looks away from him. But with Marvin Jones gone, I'm not saying that was a detriment to the offense at all. That definitely helped out, but they definitely took some looks away from AJ Green. Only got 132 compared to, I mean, let's look at some years past here. I mean, pretty much above 150 targets the last 2 years before that. So, like I said, took away some looks from him and probably a few touchdowns, but nonetheless, still a very good year. And like I said, with Marvin Jones gone and Mohamed Sanu, I'm not 100% sure where Mohamed Sanu signed. But anyway, definitely a guy that I think could have a huge year statistically in 2016. So, move on to my Devontae Adams is the name I was looking for with the Green Bay Packers earlier. He was supposed to emerge this year. I actually was very high on him and then didn't really do anything. So anyway, move on to my number, I believe it is 4 receiver, and that is the Dallas Cowboys' Dez Bryant. So Dez struggled a little bit this year just because of the quarterback inconsistencies for the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, working a lot with Matt Castle this year and not really getting a whole lot of chance to work with Tony Romo. So Dez Bryant is still a top 5 receiver in this league, no doubt to me, especially with Calvin Johnson gone now. It was really between him and Calvin for a little bit. Obviously, Dez spent quite a bit of the year injured too, suspended, and missed, I believe, up until week 8, and then even missed some of that game. And like I said, a guy that when healthy is still a top 5 receiver, maybe even top 3 receiver in this league, just purely based off talent. And again, if Romo's able to have a fully healthy season and the offense is able to be a little bit more consistent, they've got that great offensive line. They've got a decent backfield this year, and like I said, it all really boils down to Tony Romo's health. So at number 3, I've got the New York Giants, Odell Beckham Jr. So OBJ was able to have another extremely solid year. Not able to put up a catch like he did last year, but nonetheless still able to get almost 100 receptions, 1,450 yards, and 13 touchdowns. So proving that his rookie year was not a fluke. Definitely the Giants' primary receiver. Now this guy was extremely, extremely hot from about weeks 8 to 15, putting up almost 100 yards and a touchdown at least every week. And if Eli Manning's able to stay consistent, and then I really think finding a running back will be extremely key to keeping Odell Beckham being able to stretch the field a little bit and using him more as a weapon at 20 to 30 yards so the safeties can drop down a little bit and you can extend the routes on OBJ. But I really like the direction that the Giants are headed in. They made some big signings this offseason. And like I said, running back's a key thing for them. I know Ezekiel Elliott's been an option, but Ezekiel Elliott's been an option for almost every team that doesn't have a star running back. So anyway, I think that OBJ will have a big year in 2016, 2017. I think you can expect the same type of stats. So at number 2, I've got the Atlanta Falcons, Julio Jones, a guy that actually, I think he struggled with injury for a little bit of this year, but as a whole, I believe he was their yardage leader. He was 1,871, 8 touchdowns. By no means the leader in touchdowns, but a lot of those were taken by Devonta Freeman this year. And like I said, Julio Jones, one of the most athletic, fast, just freakish receivers in this league, and has been for a couple years now. And if, again, Falcons, another team that I like the direction they're headed in. I mentioned that before. I like the direction really that the offense is headed in. And I think Julio Jones is definitely the focal point of that offense, maybe of that entire team. So at number 1, it's pretty obvious. I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, Antonio Brown. As if he wasn't before with Calvin Johnson still in the league, he definitely is the best receiver now. I think he's as clear-cut number 1 as there is at any position in the NFL. And he missed a little bit of time because of injury this year. Not a whole lot, though. Weeks that he just put up massive numbers. Big Ben's inconsistencies and a little bit of injury trouble for him, I think, might have hurt Antonio Brown a little bit. If Big Ben's able to be a little bit more consistent this year with having Le'Veon Bell back, that'll take a little bit of focus off Antonio Brown. Obviously, Antonio Brown being the focus of that offense. Martavis Bryant, the other emerging receiver for the Steelers, is actually out for the year, suspended for the year, I believe. Obviously, you've been keeping up with NFL news, you probably know that. But, if I didn't mention, Antonio Brown put up 18-34, 10 touchdowns, and tied for the league with Julio Jones with 136 receptions. So definitely looked at a lot, and was second in the league in targets with 195, again right behind Julio Jones. So that concludes my wide receiver video, longer video since I was doing top 20, and tomorrow we'll be coming back with my top 10 tight ends. So a little bit shorter video, and position that doesn't have as much depth in the league, so still will be a fun one nonetheless. Get to talk about some of the better tight ends, especially ones that emerged in the league, the Greg Olson's, Travis Kelce's, Delaney Walker's of the world, and obviously Gronk. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have not seen the last 2 videos in the series, they will be in the outro, and then also I'll put the link to the entire playlist in the description below. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, couple weeks, days, months down the line, then The link to the entire playlist will be in the description below. So, like I said, today I will be doing running backs, and I'll be doing the top 10 for that again. I did top 10 quarterbacks yesterday. When I run into a little bit more of a depth position like wide receiver, I might extend it to like top 20 or something like that.